Jessica.
Lucy.
Jennifer.
Jennifer.
I am feeling the cheesiest today.
Is it a day that ends in Y?
It is a day that ends in Y. Because we're back with Gen CFB. The two Gens cutting it up.
Yes, in person.
Cheez-Its. I'm excited. It was a fun weekend this week.
It was a fun weekend. You were at Oklahoma, Mississippi.
A much better game than I thought, but I really couldn't care less. I took one step into the Grove and said, I'm home. This is where I belong. I don't need anything else.
The alcohol was flowing. I'm sure.
I didn't drink. It was a little embarrassing because like they had these insane setups, and one of the tailgates we went to had like a full bartender, and to go up and be like, just a Diet Coke, please, but pour.
Are you a Diet Coke girly too? We got a lot of those in the office.
One day I woke up and I was like, I need a Diet Coke, and ever since then I like haven't stopped.
Wow, I woke up feeling cheesiest. We already did that bit. Let's move on to the main bit, the bit of the week, which is we're bringing back a crowd pleaser, a favorite, if you will.
Ope of the week. We're feeling very Midwestern. We're going back to our roots. And we got our Ope of the week. Good thing that this week was weird, so we had like 1,010,000 nominees. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I'll do the first Ope of the week. This one, the Midwest connection, fairly obvious. It's the kicker at Indiana. Not the kicker on the Indiana football team, the kicker at College Game Day who was kicking for the $100,000 prize winning. He blew out his knee warming up. It was a big ope.
To like blow out your knee is bad, but to do it where I feel like this year everyone's made that kick. Like everybody has made that kick. Like it's happening more and more.
Well, the Cal guy did it in Vans.
Yeah, the Cal guy did it in Vans, and then I think the next week somebody did it too.
Yeah.
Like it's been happening a lot. So like you had to feel pretty good about your chances.
He didn't even make it.
And then to just eat shit on national TV in such an embarrassing way, like, oof, tough.
What
That's
did
a
you
big
think?
ope.
It is a big ope. What did you think of Lee Corso at Indiana for Game Day, Lucy?
That was a very, very sweet moment. Now, we didn't get to watch Game Day live, so I had to go back and look. But I know that I have had some takes before about Lee Corso on Game Day, and I've always loved Lee Corso. I always will. To sort of see him, like, his time is he's probably got 1 or 2 seasons left at this point. So to see this sort of like victory lap that he's getting to take and to go back to Indiana, especially after a few weeks off, was just like an incredibly special moment because he's meant so much to college football and college football fans. And for Indiana to have the season they're having right now has to be just unbelievably special for him.
Yeah, I loved his sweater. Also, speaking of sweaters, big weekend for our friends at Home Field Apparel. Big Indiana people there. They were having a good time.
They're going to have to rebrand the 9-Windiana because they're going to need way
12
more.
Windiana, 13 Windiana. That doesn't
National
that
champion Indiana.
I mean,
you can use it, Home Field. I give you approval.
Yeah, no copyright infringement there. Yeah, Indiana, like Bloomington, we would agree, right? One of the most like underrated campuses
Beautiful
in
campus.
America. It's nice.
Buffalo's great wings.
Yes.
Buffalo's is awesome.
It's nice that they had their moment in the sun, and hopefully their moment continues, Lucy.
Ohio State in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a big test coming up. But before we move on to what's happening next week, we got to finish our opes of the week.
We have a lot of opes.
Why don't you give us the next one?
Our next Ope of the week is the LSU holder getting smacked in the face with a football and then subsequently chewed out by Brian Kelly, which doesn't sound like him at all. Something must be up. He's always a very normal, level-headed guy who doesn't openly hate his players. That doesn't sound like them.
Different game plan now with what we... Okay, we got to get the operation up there. Here we go. But
Big Ope.
He was screaming at this guy's face on the sideline and screaming, you got to get out there and get the effing operation going, which is such a funny thing to scream at someone.
It's crazy because it's like, hey, you messed up. What are you going to do? Like,
there's
nothing you can do at that point. And then ended up not being an issue because I think it's so funny to chew out your players like that. And then after the game, have one of your players come out and be like, yeah, we did not plan even a little bit for Marcel Reed.
And it showed.
Once. Like, we had genuinely no even earthly idea that they might make a quarterback change, even though that Wegman has been out for a chunk of the season too. So just absolute failure, but sure, blame it on the holder. do whatever.
Yeah, bad moment for the holder, but like bad moment for LSU just in general. The second half of that game, like there was also a very funny Ope moment where Garrett Nussmeier like kind of like attempted to tackle a Texas A&M player after one of his interceptions, which was kind of funny. But yeah, LSU not being able to defend the QB run at all maybe does not bode super well for when they play against Jalen Milroe in Alabama in a couple weeks, but also they have a bye this weekend, so I'm sure that will be something that they will focus on because that's kind of game right there for them if they lose to Alabama.
It feels like there are going to be a lot of points in that one.
It could. There's definitely like quarterback shootout potential.
I think it's going to be odd. I think it's going to be weird. I think it's going to be odd. But it's like, weirdly enough, a playoff elimination game, even though I've said that about like every game this season. But this one's a big one. But you want to move on to our next Ope of the week?
Let's do it.
All right. Auburn had 14 players on the field for a field goal attempt, including 2 holders.
Yeah.
Which I know Brian Kelly's like, 2 holders? What a brilliant idea. I should have done it. Auburn had a double Ope of the week, too, because Hugh Freeze had some tummy trouble.
He had diarrhea.
We've all been there. We had an elite illness graphic come out, and it just turns out that Hugh Freeze, when he's shitting himself, is the best version of Hugh Freeze, and Auburn won, and they won pretty big against Kentucky.
It's an all-time quote graphic thing with Hugh Freeze that just says illness that I'm going to just get so much use out of because it's like up there with the Sam Darnold mononucleosis one where it's just like, you didn't really need to put that on a graphic card, but...
And you can double it up with him in the hospital bed giving the thumbs up.
Oh, my God.
He really has just reached full meme potential. Auburn's still pretty bad, though, but Kentucky has just lost 3 straight, just huge downward slope. The quarterback situation hasn't worked out. Things are just not good. You beat Ole Miss, and then that was it.
Things are not looking good for Kentucky. Like you said, Auburn's first SEC win of the season, and they ran the ball really well, and now they got SEC juggernaut Vanderbilt. So at home, so that'll be a big one. Hugh Freeze versus Diego Pavia again, a rematch that we all totally saw coming last year.
I think Auburn plays New Mexico this year as well, so they have potential to lose to the entire state of New Mexico. But I'm not 100% positive on it, so you can't get mad at me if it's not accurate.
Okay, the next Ope of the week is the Texas Tech kicker Reese Burkhardt, who wrote MAGA like Trump 2024 on his shirt and lifted up his jersey to show his shirt after a trick play touchdown. The Ope part isn't that. The Ope part is that
a little bit.
Well, that is very Opey. I mean, yes. And also, by the way, very hard to find a Midwest connection in this game because this is like Texas Tech TCU is like a very Texas-y situation. Like Sonny Dykes, what's his name? Joey McGuire, the coach of Texas Tech, super Texas-y. But anyways, Ope of the week on the lifting up the jersey, but bigger Ope. Missed his field goal. Texas Tech lost by 1 point. This game, I don't know if you watched any of this. It was like probably one of the craziest games of the weekend because TCU was up by a lot early, and then Texas Tech came up, and then TCU like overcame a 17-point deficit at the end. So like it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of runs. It felt like a basketball game of runs. But TCU gets the win. Texas Tech loses by 1 point after that OP showing by the kicker.
Hell yeah, brother! You own the libs. Just not TCU. Just not Sonny Dykes. Sorry about that. All right, another Ope of the week. This one, a Jessica Smetana special. Navy's 6 turnover day against Notre Dame.
Yeah, it was Navy going into the game led the country in not fumbling, or I think we're second in the country in not fumbling. That is no longer the case. 6 turnovers in this game. Just fumbling here, fumbling there, interception there. Muffed punt here. It was just a really sloppy game from Navy. But the Notre Dame post-game win expectancy, 100%. So you can't just say it was the turnovers. Notre Dame won by 37 points. But I think, like, my takeaway, Navy's, a lot of people are going to write off Navy after that, but they still have the toughest part of their schedule ahead of them. I think what Drew Cronick is doing with their offense is actually like pretty cool. Like there were a number of times where my eye discipline watching Navy's offense was not where it needed to be. Like I was watching the wrong guy and this guy's got the ball, like very tricky offense, lots of motion and stuff. So very much still in it in the conference. We'll see how they do now. They got to play Tulane still, which is a really good team. They got to play Army still, which is obviously still undefeated. But not their best day at MetLife Stadium.
So we have a double Ope of a sort. Let me squeeze right past you. Let me squeeze right past you there. Sorry. 2 6-turnover games. However, SMU managed to win.
Oh my God.
Despite turning the ball over 6 times. They beat Duke. Came down to a failed 2-point conversion for the Blue Devils. I think something very interesting about this is that SMU turned the ball over 6 times. I don't believe Duke ever turned it over and still managed to lose this game, which is just, that's not great.
No.
That's not good.
Yeah, fumble luck is tricky, but then when you get it and then you still lose, that's even worse. It's just it was a bad one overall for Duke. And I like that Manny Diaz went for it on the 2-point play. It might have been a little pass interference on that, but also maybe not like the best call. Like the QB kind of only had the one option, and the guy was covered, so it didn't work, and that was a bummer. But big games for both those teams next weekend. Duke's got Miami. Manny Diaz revenge. Perhaps maybe. Not. I don't know.
Most likely not.
SMU also might get their first like big win of the season against Pitt. We'll get to that a little bit later, but I think before we do that, we need to talk about another big ope, which was Ohio State athletics. Lucy, what did they post?
I missed this. So reading over the notes has just given me a lot of joy right now, which probably is bad that I didn't read the notes that closely. I did not see this. That's the one downside of spending your Saturday in the Grove. So Ohio State athletics accidentally reposted a photo of Urban Meyer from his night in Columbus 2 years ago. And you can just look it up.
I think like we all know what night it was. He was wearing the pink quarter zip.
He was at Urban Steakhouse, and
that was like a where were you when moment for college football fans. I know he was like the coach of the Jaguars at the time, but like it was like it was
for us.
I was at Andy's Custard in Chicago after driving home from a Notre Dame game with my parents, and I was like, holy shit, and then I was like, I don't want to actually explain this to you, but Urban Meyer did something bad. Yeah, they reposted it without knowing that like a fan was holding a sign with a picture of it on it, and they like reposted it without knowing, I think, what the picture of Urban was from. Very, very awkward. I mean, the whole game was full of opes for Ohio State. They made a lot of mistakes in this game. Obviously, we talked on the Le Batard Show this week about how their fans were like reacting as though they lost because they wanted to beat Nebraska by a lot of points, like Indiana had done the week before, and they couldn't. The offense was not what you would expect. They could barely run the ball. They've had a really bad time with injury luck on the offensive line. They're now down 2 tackles, Lucy, which is not going to be great going up against Penn State. Do you think that this is like a repeatable performance, that Ohio State is going to play like this more? Or do you think this is just like maybe, big game ahead, they kind of overlooked a tough Nebraska defense?
I think it's definitely repeatable because we want to give credit to Nebraska. Nebraska has a very good defense and has had a very good defense for a very long time. And if this had been any other team that had the exact same players, that ran the exact same plays, that just wasn't Nebraska, Nebraska would have won that game. They just have like
Nebraska's just fated to lose.
Yeah, like it has to be just a brutal life as a Nebraska fan to see you leading Ohio State down the stretch, knowing that you're gonna throw a just gut-wrenching interception, like without a doubt. So I genuinely think that if any other team had played Ohio State like this, they would have won. Like I just think it's the Nebraska curse. There are issues with that offensive line. Penn State has a good defense, but it's not as great as like previous Penn State years. Their offense has improved. I'm curious to see if we run into the same sort of situation where like we're not thinking in the terms of X's and O's, but just in the sense of like football, the way that Nebraska loses a game real close to the way that James Franklin just can't sort of win the big game. So is it going to be a real just actually come down to the matchup, or is it going to be the college football gods having agendas and pushing them?
I mean, it's something's got to give, right? Like something's got to give with Ohio State and Penn State. One more, or I guess we have a couple more opes. Do you want to talk about Cade McNamara?
Yes. So Cade McNamara, people are going to get mad at me. I gave up on the Iowa game after he threw like an 80-yard pick six after Iowa had like created a turnover where we really just had to move the ball like 20 yards and we would have scored. And Cade McNamara turned that into 7 for Northwestern. I quit. And then I looked back and I was like, oh my God, Iowa is up by 30. I said, wow, 4 pick sixes for Iowa. That's pretty good. Turns out that was not the case. Cade McNamara was hurt. They brought in Brendan Sullivan, a Northwestern transfer, and he pretty much balled out for the Hawks. And Cade is not even listed on the depth chart this week. They say it's injury related. I believe that he has been benched. This is Iowa fans know this trope very, very well. We have gone through so many great backup quarterbacks being like, why are they not starting? Like, what is the reason behind this? So it seems like it could be trending in the direction where Brennan Sullivan will be the starting QB for the Hawkeyes, and that is what we all want. Iowa could have won like 3 more games with that, potentially. So I'm sad. Kate, I'm sorry it didn't work out, but like...
And the OPE was if you're watching this on YouTube.
Oh, God, I didn't even talk about the general OPE. It's because I forget that you guys don't all watch Iowa because you're healthy and happy and have lives you enjoy living. Cade McNamara refuses to throw with the laces. Like, I'm not even you, he never does it. So he tried like a bomb with just, like, you couldn't even see the laces. They were
just sort of chucked it up there. Yeah.
Like, that's not a helpful thing for our audio audience. But you can honestly imagine it. The way that sound is the way Cade McNamara looks throwing the ball. Yeah, I just kind of forgot that. That's not a normal thing. So that's the actual OPE. I'm just happy that we have moved on and found a new quarterback. But yeah, you just look it up. Look up any photos of him throwing, and he never throws with the laces. And you're like, brother, what are we doing? I cannot believe he led a team to the playoff.
Speaking of that team, there was another fight in the Michigan State rivalry. I mean, I guess this is OPE worthy because, like, they did it again. They did it again, but
Pick a new bit.
I'm getting sick of this, Lucy.
Find something new.
I'm getting sick of this. Just like
you guys should do an opposite bit where you all like do the hokey pokey or something after the game.
Oh, the hokey pokey.
Yeah, do something fun like that.
I haven't thought about the hokey pokey in a while.
Used your left, shake it all about. That's what they should do. They should do, or like everyone has to do like a trust fall or something after the end of the game. It's not good for the state of Michigan. You guys got to work on this.
Yeah, it's just another fight.
Get over it.
Yeah.
You guys are so dramatic. Men are they're so emotional.
Let's go to our Week 10 college football preview presented by Hampton Farms Peanuts, the official snack nut of the tailgate. Lucy's holding her Hampton Farms Cajun peanuts right now.
The Cajuns are my favorite. I like a little spice.
Ooh,
I like a little zest.
Definitely love a little spicy peanut. There's a few big games this weekend, Lucy. I think one of the more like underrated SEC matchups will be Texas A&M and South Carolina. Low spread in that game. Texas A&M is the favorite. Lucy, obviously we're all paying attention to Texas A&M's quarterback situation. Are they going to do a 2-quarterback system thing here? South Carolina's defensive front still really good. They've got a good defense, and I think it's going to be hard for South Carolina to score points against the Texas A&M defense, but it also might be tricky for Texas A&M to score a lot of points in this game too. Given like we don't even know who's going to start at quarterback. We don't know if they're going to do like one series here, one series there, or they're just going to feel it out and see what's working. I really don't know. We're recording this early in the week, so my guess is both guys probably might play. But that could be a really interesting one for Texas A&M and kind of a tricky spot for them after coming off that huge win against LSU at home.
Yeah, South Carolina is always a just sort of mess shit up type of team. Like
Beamer ball.
Yeah, whatever sort of season they're having, it doesn't matter. They're going to make your life miserable. And they're going to make their life miserable, too. They like to do both of that. This is a game I'm probably going to stay away from betting-wise just because, like, I felt pretty confident going to the South Carolina-Ole Miss game that South Carolina was going to do some real, like, Gamecock Vortex shit and then just absolutely got smacked. But then the next week they play Alabama really close. They are really just a tough team to sort of figure out, and I think that applies to them as well. They are a very tough team for themselves to figure out. The way that Texas A&M beat LSU was pretty dominant. Their defense is so good that I'm leaning towards there. I feel like after the performance you saw, you got to go with Reed. Like, I get that Connor Wegman was this super high recruit. You know, he's been there for a while, whatever. I just think that what you saw from Reed was so impressive, and I also understand that South Carolina is probably going to do the not LSU thing and actually prepare.
Yeah, they'll probably defend the run better. I think like maybe neither option is perfect. Like you're not getting a quarterback with like a elite passing game, but you have a player that can make more explosive plays on the ground. But perhaps it's a tricky situation, and one we should all monitor.
I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna keep my eye on it, but I'm gonna stay away from it.
One thing I'm not staying away from: Ohio State and Penn State.
I'm not staying away from it either. I'll be there.
Lucy will be there. Actually, I guess technically I am staying away from it because I'm not going to be there. But like we mentioned, Ohio State has a lot of issues on their offensive line, losing a couple of tackles in the last 2 weeks, going up against a stingy Penn State defense. At the taping of this, we don't know if Drew Allar is going to play because he got hurt at the midway through the Wisconsin game last weekend, and he was having a pretty good game. And obviously, I think Penn State would like their starting quarterback to be ready for this. This is the biggest game of their season so far. And Penn State too has been a little snake bitten with injuries. They've got linemen on both sides that have gotten hurt, so it's kind of tough to make a call on the game without knowing if the Penn State quarterback's going to play or not. But I do kind of give the edge to Ohio State. I've seen Ohio State go toe to toe with really good teams already this season. Like I watched the Oregon game and saw how explosive their offense could be. But I think if there's one weakness, it is definitely going to be how the line plays it if they're able to run the ball.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Ohio State too. The quarterback situation is obviously a question for Penn State, and I imagine we're not going to find out who the starting quarterback is until
game time.
Till game time, which coaching move, whatever. Do what you want. I think Ohio State's going to win. I feel decently confident in that. I know that Penn State has made the changes they've needed to this season. Like their offense is better. They've added some sort of element of a bigger play to their repertoire, but the defense hasn't held off as well as I thought. You know, they've played close games as well. Like looking back at the time a few weeks ago, you know, barely beating USC was a quality win, and now you're like, I don't know about that. Maryland beat USC, like a very, very bad Maryland team did. So there's a lot of questions. I think that this is probably the most evenly matched Penn State-Ohio State game we've seen
in a while maybe,
which
yeah.
is fun and exciting.
Perhaps.
But this is a real, like, I think that Ryan Day has to prove himself, but not nearly as much as James Franklin does. Because, like, Ryan Day has lost the Michigan game, but he rarely loses the Penn State one. I don't know if he's ever lost the Penn State one. So, like, I just look at this as this is sort of James Franklin's, like, you have to prove it right now because Penn State is stuck in a situation that a lot of teams are stuck in. They're a very good football team, but they've never really taken that next step to great. And this would be a win that could do that for them, especially in the 12-team playoff. Like a win like this would be really, really helpful for their case, even though I imagine they'll probably make it anyways. But, yeah, I think I'm leaning towards Ohio State, but I think I'd like to see Penn State win. I think that would be more fun.
I think that the stakes are really high for Ohio State, to state the obvious. How many times can we say state in this segment, I wonder? I think we're at like 30 in the last 5 minutes. But they already lost to Oregon. They already have one conference loss, so a second conference loss. It's a very similar situation to LSU playing Alabama next week. Like, it would be really tough to overcome that and still have a case in the CFP if you lose both of these big games on your schedule. I think maybe the Nebraska game was like a little alarm bell, so they'll get it together in the week.
Too.
You know, that always works for teams. You get a little scared and then you use it and move forward with it. But gonna be a fun one at noon. Lucy will be there.
They got to stop playing that game at noon. I'm so sorry. We have got to stop playing that game at noon.
It would be a great night game in Happy Valley.
It would be such a cool night game. We got to stop playing that game at noon.
Governor Tim Walz also picked Penn State to win. He knows where the swing votes are. One other game I want to mention before we go, Pitt at SMU. SMU is a big favorite. This is another game where, as of the recording, I don't know the status of Pitt's quarterback. He got hurt during the Syracuse game. That game was ridiculous. I oped so many times. Kyle McCord threw 3 pick sixes and a half. It was just a absolutely ridiculous game. And Holstein was in late and got dinged up, and I'm not exactly even sure what his injury is, but that would be tough for Pitt if he came out. Their offense has like been a little slower in the past few weeks than like the hot start that they came out with, but
exactly where they want to be.
Yeah, right. Narduzzi's like, pump the brakes, everyone.
You guys gotta stop scoring so many points. We're not a showy team.
But SMU's quarterback, very dynamic player, fun to watch. They got a good run game, and this is gonna be a big test for the Pitt defense. SMU's a big favorite, 7.5 points at home, 8 p.m. on the ACC network. I think the winner of this game might actually be taken seriously in the ACC running. I think right now everyone's talking about Miami and Clemson, but it's hard to be undefeated. I know SMU has one loss this season to BYU, but BYU is also undefeated. Yeah. So 2 good teams squaring off on the ACC network.
It'll be fun. We'll finally sort of figure out who there's such a jump between the top of the ACC and the bottom. And Pitt and SMU have just been right there in the sense of like, are you as good as we maybe think or not? I don't know. This will be a good sort of matchup. I think it's funny that it is on the ACC network. So
I'm taking SMU.
I think I'm going to take SMU too.
I am bravely taking the 7.5-point favorite at home.
Wow, we are bold and we are living life unafraid, and we'll give hot takes whenever.
And we're feeling the cheesiest.
And we're feeling the cheesiest
Don't forget about
and
that.
the nuttiest. I don't know if
that should be their slogan.
Yeah, we're feeling the nuttiest.
I'm feeling the nuttiest with Hampton Farms.
Actually, I'm taking Ohio. I was already taking Ohio State, but the Peanuts and the Buckeye.
Spoke to you.
Yeah, they're nuts. They're nut brothers. Thanks for watching Gen CFB.
Nut brothers.